Hey guys, welcome to Kakao Academy channel. Today I'd like to talk to you about custom exceptions in Java. Topics I would like to cover with you would be when do we use exceptions, when to avoid using exceptions, how to create custom exceptions in Java. That's our final goal. So before we move on to the coding part of this video, let's talk briefly about exceptions as a concept in Java. So what is an exception? Basically, we have a way to let our program know what to do in case something exceptional happens. So let's say we write an email client that would talk to email server. And in case of network interference or some sort of synchronization issue, we might have an occurrence of an issue or exception, right? Something exceptional is taking place while our code is being executed. So the concept of having exceptions in our code allows us to pretty much either ignore a particular issue, maybe do something about it, maybe just log it to the console, log it to a log file, whatnot. Yeah, we are pretty much flexible. It's important to mention that there is a lot of good and bad practices when it comes to exceptions. When you work in a team on a particular framework or particular piece of code, you'll see that some guys tend maybe and most likely not intentionally abuse the concept of exception. But even though the video is not dedicated to best practices, I'll still try to talk about a little bit. So let's switch to our IDE and I'll try to show you what I'm talking about. Alright guys, so for the sake of exercise first, let's see why exception probably should not be used in the code. So as an example, let's create a new class and let's call it string util, for example. Okay. And in our string util class we will have a public constructor, sorry, private one. Let's make it private. And we're going to have a static method. Let's say get matched we will return value of a string, get matched value in get matched value in list. So as a parameter we will take a list of strings. Let's call it my list for now. Alright, and from here what we're gonna try to accomplish, so basically we're gonna parse through a list for string s in our list, and we would say if s equals to predefined value, let's say full, then return s. So as you can see in this case, since our return is enclosed in the if statement and then in for statement or loop, our IDE lets us know that there is an error with our code. We are still missing a return value. Let's see if I'm right. Yeah, you see, missing return statement. So a lot of times in such cases, people would do something like throw new. So we haven't created any custom exceptions yet, so I'll use a kind of general one, exception, throw new exception, and with such an output as provided list did not contain requested value. So, and let's add exception to method signature. So why this approach is not ideal? Because basically this is a method, right? And this class is a provider. Now, when we talk about the consumer, so let's say we would like to use this method in our main demo class and do something like let's output string with you dot get matched value arrays as list, and here we're gonna provide some values. You see, first of all, it already asks us to add exception to method signature. So let's say we have multiple methods here with different signature. What we end up having in the end, instead of having clearly defined exceptions that might be thrown by the main method or any other method, we will have a general one exception. And let's see if I can fix it. Yep, exception. And it's not quite helpful, to be honest. And this is number one. Number two would be the fact that what do we do in case the list does not contain a value that is equal to foo. So what do we do in this case? So here again, instead of just reusing this API, I'll have to catch an exception. So I'll read through documentation, I'll catch this exception, and I'll have to find my workaround to deal with this exception. So basically what we are doing here, we are restricting potential consumer, and instead of providing flexibility required by good practices of coding, we enforce this type of code, and it's not always good. This, in my opinion, and in opinion of many others, is considered to be a bad practice. So instead, something different can be done. So maybe we can provide optional as a string option. Yep, it's you. Okay, and yeah, and have optional as a return type. There are many other ways, but please try to stay away from such approaches, because this is definitely not a good approach. Now let's talk about a way we can create a custom exception in Java. So first of all, let's get rid of this class for now. Let's create ourselves a new package. Let's see, new package, and let's call it exceptions. Sorry, my bad. Exceptions. All right. So in the exception, so let's say as I mentioned earlier, let's say we're working on email client that would talk to a remote email server, and we know and we assume that at a particular point there might be an issue with our networking, right? So something might go wrong. This might be either timeout or synchronization or some connectivity issue, whatnot. So what we can do about it would be the following. We can create a class, and let's call it for now network exception. Pretty easy so far. So to create a custom exception, we extend throwable, and we create a constructor message string. All right, so let's look a little bit at what we are doing here. So we're creating a custom exception throwable. It extends throwable and has a string parameter in its constructor. So basically when we use this exception, we allow ourselves to provide additional output. So in case exception happens, we actually can provide consumer of our framework, our code, with additional output for debugging or other purposes. So now when we have our custom network exception in place, let's try and use it. Let's go to our main demo class, and let's say we have a method, static one, called that returns boolean, called has good connection, and the method returns false, our connection is not good. So as a consumer of this method, our main method would call it and say that if has connection, if not has connection, sorry, throw new network exception. And here, as I mentioned earlier, we can provide some additional output. Let's say our connection is really bad. Okay. Let's add exception to method signature and try to run our code. Okay, so as you can see, the output is pretty straightforward. Exception in thread main org network exception was thrown, and with additional output our connection is really bad. So as you can see, this is a way to create our custom exceptions, and an example of one of the ways to use one. Thank you for watching. Thank you guys.